breaking nuclear news. This has to be one of my favorite nuclear news weeks of all time. Let's dive right in. First up, price action. The Sprott Uranium Miners ETF on the week was only up 1% versus the broader market. The US stock market, S&P 500, was up 3%. So uranium stocks taking a breather from outperforming the rest of the market, because if you just look over the last 6 months, uranium stocks are down 3.5%, the uranium ETF, whereas the broader US stock market is down 6%. So uranium stocks proving to be a reliable store of value in this economic winter phase that we are in. But again, short-term price action irrelevant when you're investing for long-term gains, long-term life-changing returns potentially. So let's dive through the fundamentals. Epic, juicy uranium charts incoming right now. First up, the most important chart if you are a commodity and or uranium investor, right? Supply demand fundamentals, the uranium supply demand squeeze. You can just see until over the next few years, until 2040, massive demand. You can see the white line is the uppercase demand, which is the most likely. Then you have the reference case demand in the blue line, way higher than the total future production. And this is the entire bull case in theory for the uranium investment, right? Prices have to rise to fill this gap. It is the only way to get production out of the ground. And so you can just see that currently in 2022, according to this chart from the Visual Capitalist, starting in 2023, the massive supply demand gap will balloon exponentially. So that's why this is an exciting long-term trade in theory if you believe in supply demand microeconomics. Now, this is why I keep saying that the uranium demand, these old models, even that model I just showed you, is probably outdated, because new demand sources just continue to spring up and grow exponentially. This comes from the IEA, which has increased its 2040 forecast for nuclear by 11%. It just keeps growing. We have the World Energy Outlook in the dotted light pink line from 21. And then we have the new one from 22, just increasing by 11%. This demand curve continues to spike exponentially. And old models are just still not factoring this in. And part of why these uranium demand forecasts just keep getting missed is because we have revolutionary technology on the horizon. And we know that small modular reactor technology is a revolutionary way for humans around the globe to access reliable, clean energy, right? It really doesn't get bigger than this in the grand scheme of human history. Access to reliable, clean energy anywhere in the world. Global number of small modular reactor projects by status of development. This is from the International Energy Agency. So we have a whole bunch in the conceptual design. This is why I say we're in the early stages of the nuclear renaissance. Then we have a bunch in the basic and detailed design phase. Then we have only a small amount under construction and a very small amount in operation. So you can see that wall of money pouring in, wall of construction just getting started. And so you can see at the top there, the under 25 megawatt projects in the turquoise and in the lime green. You can see the ones between 25 and 100 megawatts. Those are the small ones. And you can just see that there's a big wall of those incoming, right? In addition to the bigger ones, which are the 100 to 300 and plus megawatt reactors. So just giving you a glimpse into what we can expect in the future. Even in the immediate term, we're seeing massive growth in uranium demand because we are at that seasonal point of the uranium contracting cycle. This comes from TD Securities. You can just see that starting in October, November, and December, we get a historic boost in nuclear plants purchasing uranium. The bright red line is the massive spike in demand for uranium from nuclear plants in this year alone, 2022. You can just see it spiking. Look at 2019. Look at the prior years. There's always a boost in this period. Now let's zoom out and look globally at where all this demand is coming from. Global leaders champion nuclear to solve energy crisis and climate change. Now let's go around the world to see how the most powerful people in the world are pushing uranium and nuclear power. The new British Prime Minister showing his support for nuclear. The important thing is to focus on our long-term energy security. That means more renewables, more offshore wind, and indeed more nuclear. So continued bullish sentiment from the leaders of the United Kingdom. Then you have the president of France visiting India to promote a 6-reactor deal. President Macron of France is to visit India early next year to move forward a proposed EDF deal to build 6 new EPR reactors at Jaitapur, which would make it the world's largest nuclear power plant with an output of 9.9 gigawatts. This is the nuclear renaissance. And so what follows from all this bullish sentiment from the world elite is a wall of money, right? The Canada Infrastructure Bank has committed $970 million towards Canada's first small modular reactor, the one of many. Look how expensive that is. Clearly, governments are investing for the long term. Then you have the mouthpiece of the Biden administration, the US government, federal government, saying this. Nations understand that an affordable, reliable, resilient, clean energy mix is essential to long-term climate security, economic security, energy security, and national security. And that has led to a rising interest in nuclear power. So obviously the US government doing everything it can to push nuclear power. Now that statement is massive, right? The US government, the most powerful institution in the world, in addition to the World Economic Forum, which we covered, are pushing uranium. It doesn't get much bigger than that, right? Poland chooses US to build its first nuclear power plant. Poland getting its first one using US technology. US Department of Energy plans 25 metric tons per year of offtake contracts over 6+ years to stock a HALEU nuclear fuel bank as soon as possible, converting and enriching millions of pounds of mined uranium in the USA. Think about that for a second. I just showed how Q4 2022 is bullish for uranium demand, right? As these big nuclear power plants start to shore up supply and contract, right? So we're getting that. We're getting the purchasing from the Wall Street firms, taking supply off the market. And now we have the US government buying uranium off the market. The demand for this resource is out of control. And what's following this wall of money is massive infrastructure build-outs. Idaho Nuclear Lab gets $150 million to upgrade infrastructure. This comes from the US Department of Energy. The department said the money is part of President Joe Biden's Inflation Reduction Act that includes some $375 billion over a decade to fight climate change. The money will support nearly a dozen projects at the lab's advanced test reactor and materials fuels complex. The lab is one of 17 Energy Department national labs and is the nation's top advanced nuclear energy research lab. It's a key component in the U.S. effort to revamp the nation's fading nuclear power industry that started during the Obama administration and continued under the Trump and Biden administration. And then naturally, we do have the typical 180-degree U-turns that almost every planned nuclear plant closure is going through right now. Holtec to decide by January whether to reopen Michigan nuclear plant. State's governors called for Palisades plant to restart. Reopening the shuttered reactor might become a reality. I would bet anyone a pound of uranium that this plant reopens because they're all reopening. And that's just the trend we've seen around the world, including in Germany. Then we have the CEO of Uranium Energy Corps on CNN stating, "I have never seen in my 18 years this much support from Washington for nuclear energy on a bipartisan basis." It's a historic time. And part of the reason why it's so exciting is because we're still in the early stages, right? In terms of human adoption of a revolutionary power source, we're still at the beginning of the exponential curve because new technologies, like we've talked about, small modular reactor technologies, are going to proliferate the expansion of this revolutionary fuel. Canada's Prodigy Sea Energy and the USA's NuScale Power, which you can invest in on the public markets, have announced the conceptual design for the transportable and sea-based small modular reactor. So can you see the vision where the entire world will run on uranium via small modular reactor technology? It seems like that's where everything is headed. We're still in the early stages, and we will continue to stay on top of this market.